All right, everyone. Time. So are we ready for the elevator speech of a lifetime? Who wants to go first? We should have numbered the tables. Next time we'll number the tables so I can just call out a number. You'll go. All right. So we have our, okay, so what phase of the project?
We decided on implementation.
Implementation. And who did you run into in the elevator? Or who are you going to be running into? Carlos Ramos. Everybody laughs. We all know Carlos.
Actually, that's the biggest thing is your senior manager you run into in the elevator, and you're trying to explain why the implementation phase, why change management is so important in the organization.
So the senior IT person? All right, so do you mind just going out and talking to the senior IT person? I see her standing right there.
Sure.
Okay.
The reason why the change management process is so important in the implementation phase is because it really gives you a chance to review how we put this in, and what we did as far as what we accomplished, I should say, reviewing what it is that we did well, what we need to improve on, and then where we need to go in the future as far as this, because this might be just one phase of it. So therefore, it allows us to further plan out.
Who's your audience? Who are you talking to?
So that. Who?
I'm asking you, as your senior IT person, I'm asking you in your change management
process. Me? Oh, I'm sorry.
We're playing roles, right?
Yep.
You're in the whole building.
Yes.
Well, actually, for our customers, actually, generally for program or business managers, as far as that goes, for them to understand why we need to know what it is. Clearly identified if we've hit the milestones or we've hit what it is they need at that time for the future projects as well. So,
and how are they going to know that in implementation?
Because we do basically an after-action report, so to speak, and that tells us what we did right, what we did wrong, where we can go with this in the future.
So are you asking me to help you fund a bigger change management team, or you just want me to know how wonderful you are?
I need you to
get the money while you can.
I need you to help us make sure that change management is considered in the phase, especially in the planning phase as we go in, but implementation is very important at that point because, as you said, that's when we go into production, and if we didn't have it planned out before, it's going to be a train wreck at this point. So I need that answer.
Okay, good. Let's give table one a hand here. Good job. All right, so what table picked a phase of the other than implementation? Go ahead. All right, what did you guys pick?
We had requirements creation RFP.
Okay, and who is your person that you're trapped in the elevator with?
We're trapped in the elevator with the project executive.
The project executive. All right, so do you mind?
But they've had their coffee, so they're in a good mood.
They're in a good mood.
So they expect a really smooth process.
All right, have at it.
Essentially, we're going to make a pitch to the project executive. The benefit of organizational change management, integrating that into the process would address the issues of impact to existing processes as those affect the staff, and hopefully get ahead of and mitigate some of those concerns and issues so that the transition is easier downstream. Also, the benefit of having change management in place to help us manage any unexpected issues that come up in terms of identifying the requirements as we're going along, keeping the scope hemmed in and not letting that get away from us as well.
Okay.
So what's your approach for change management? What do you do?
Our approach would be we would want a team dedicated specifically to those change management issues. So identifying, clearly taking the scope, or we're still identifying requirements. So their role in that process then would be to make sure that as this scope evolves, that we don't have outside influences getting involved in that, or that we've anticipated those staff concerns and processes that might have an impact on the scope.
So in your change approach, are you doing town hall meetings? Are you doing requirements work groups? How are you pulling in the right people? How are you talking to the right people?
We definitely, as those processes, as we identify the processes, currently existing processes that the automation is going to replace, we're going to bring those stakeholders in, subject matter experts, bring their perspectives to bear on those processes of identifying requirements for the project. I'll get them involved in those conversations.
Okay, great. Table 2, good job. All right, we have time for one more phase. Who's out there? Anybody else pick something other than requirements and implementation? What'd you guys pick back there? You guys pick something different. Come on, Julie. What did you guys pick?
Planning and FSR.
Planning and FSR. We have a winner. All right. So who is the person that you're trapped in the elevator with other than Bill?
Yeah, so I chose the deputy director.
Okay.
So I would be explaining to her how we're working on putting together the FSR. And it's a new project, and we have a team dedicated to kicking off the IT portion of the project, but we have an operations part of the division that's been operating the system for 30 years under a current incumbent. And the anticipation of merging those two divisions, I feel that an organizational change management consultant would be necessary in order to ensure the culture remains positive, to help employees learn to adapt to changes, to manage merging to executive teams, and to help us establish a strategic plan and operating plan and set visions and goals.
So consultant, sounds like you're asking for more money.
I am.
Why is it that internally we aren't capable of understanding our own organization and addressing change issues?
I don't believe that that expertise exists within our division, and I believe that when you're merging two separate divisions that there's going to be biases, and this would be a neutral party that would be able to work with the teams unbiased and have the expertise that I don't believe exists in the divisions.
You sound pretty off.
Maybe some experience.
Job like that?
Exactly. All right, good job, table 3. But that, that brings up a really good point. So to have a contractor come in or not have a contractor come in, let's talk about that for a minute. What are the benefits of having a contractor? Or, excuse me, a business partner? Independent.
I was going to say, like you mentioned, you get an outside perspective.
Outside perspective, okay.
You can gain an expertise that you may not have developed previously.
Okay, so staff development, knowledge transfer.
You blame them when they're gone?
Blame them. We're the favorite targets, blame us. We got big shoulders.
So it might be overwhelming to start, and so your project might stop if it seems too overwhelming for the staff to.
Okay, so have the business partner help you get organized and get started, okay. Why would you not want a contractor? Her hand was up there like that as I'm halfway through that sentence. Go ahead, why?
Well, because a state employee knows how the state functions, knows where some of the sacred cows are, knows some of the inner workings that somebody may not be quite as likely to open up to a contractor as they would to another state employee, and the contractor may not understand exactly what the state employee is saying. On top of that, I think state employees are pretty darn special, and I think state employees can do a good job.
I don't think anybody's saying they couldn't, but go ahead.
We actually had a very different experience, and the consultants have brought that neutral balance, and the employees have really opened up to them, and they've provided a lot of coaching and that confidentiality, and without feeling at risk of losing a job or offending a boss or having that information get transferred on. And so it's actually provided a safe zone for a lot of the employees, which has been quite helpful. Yeah, and I think as this discussion is saying, that there's probably no right answer, but in my experience, a balanced approach is usually the most successful. Having an independent voice, having a team that's maybe trained in a methodology that can come train your staff, help provide planning and guidance and support along the way. But ultimately, you guys know the organization best, right? I don't. I have a sense of some of that now after all this time, but
you know, but I don't. As a consultant, I don't. But I know what's worked in other places. I have examples to share. I have tools to share. So, you know, I think there's some trade-offs both ways. So just something to think about in terms of whether you're going to make the ask for outside help or not. Yes.
Well, I think a core factor is typically contractor help is temporary. The support from the state employees is permanent.
Right.
So you've got to be prepared to transfer the sponsorship to the staff that's going to maintain it over time.
Yeah, and we've been involved in projects where we were given sole responsibility for it. And about 6 months into the project, we called time out and said, this isn't going to be successful, right? And then worked on a knowledge transfer plan and helped them get up to speed. But there's a variety of models out there, yes?
Contractor can come in and tell people what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. A lot of state employees will tell their boss what they want to hear and kind of stroke their egos to keep their job and look for their future promotion.
I look at vendors as a force multiplier, so to speak, because what you don't know, you can draw on from your company's networking and contacts that way, and then we are going to gain that knowledge from you, because we're not going to let you leave before you get what you want.
You cannot leave. That's right. Were you going to say something?
So I know from program side, a big project like this often means a second job for a lot of the staff. And so when you're bringing on a contractor, somebody to help out, then they're more likely to open up and just dump information, and then they can walk away and not have to do a lot of the technical legwork. So
one of the other things too, not the internal versus external support standpoint, I think we've covered the pros and cons of that, but the reality of organizational change management, tell me if you guys have seen this or not, being the afterthought, right? Oh, we'll have the business team do that when they're not busy doing JAD sessions or design sessions or testing, and they'll do the communication strategy. And it ends up those folks are just as busy as anybody else, plus they have their day job, or they have to go help the folks who still have their day job and support them. And so without having a dedicated org change management team, you can really fall behind on some of these tasks. Yes?
I mean, I think that's one of the challenges that we face is that, when you look around here, it's all a lot of people in IT and maybe some people from your business folks, but the control agency folks are not necessarily here.
Where are they?
Sometimes, and they don't always understand how important all those activities are, right?
Oh, that's right. She's right there.
She is, I know. But
we'll send her in first.
And so it's hard sometimes when you ask for, this is what we need, and they say, well, this is what you're going to get, and we say okay, and we try to move forward. And I think we have to start recognizing that we need to do a better job of raising what the risk is to move forward without these key components that we know you need to have, staff.
To be successful, right?
To be successful, it's really not the job of the business analyst to run the whole organization. Change management, they have a role to play, but not manage that effort too.
Exactly. Okay, one last comment?
In my experience, long-term maintenance, administration, like user administration, support, help desk, feedback gathering, is grossly underestimated. Because it's automation, there's a mindset that says, well, once it's programmed, we're done, right?
Yeah.
And then staff gets reassigned, like you mentioned, business staff. Typically, business staff in my organization gets reassigned to the next project. And sometimes we find that nobody's there to take the phone calls for support.
Yeah. All right, good. Let's move on to the next section. Good conversation. Hopefully that was enlightening for everybody. So let's talk a little bit about how. So we talked about what and why. Why is change management important? What it's about. But let's talk about how you do it. Has anybody done it? All right, yeah, we got some folks here. Great. They can share some stories. All right, so one of the principles in embarking on a change management effort is to be able to measure your success, measure your progress. So there's a variety of methodologies out there. We're going to talk about them in a second, the options that you have. And some of you may have used some of these, some of you have your own, and that's fine. Change management, there isn't one right answer. I mean, we're talking about people, right? So there's not one solution that fits everybody. But basically what these methodologies do is they take you from where you are now and understanding your stakeholders now versus where you want them to be the most effective. So this is a commitment curve, which is from the Heart of Change. Have any of you heard of the Heart of Change? Anybody? Heart of Change is a book written by John Kotter and Dan Cohen. John Carter's from Harvard. He's written several books on change. Dan Cohen is a principal at Deloitte. They wrote a book together. The book itself is a series of case studies and stories, which are very interesting, and we actually did a book club on the actual book and the stories for one of my clients, which really helped get them thinking in a different way about the changes that were coming due to their project. Then there's also something called the field guide, and the field guide is, to me, the secret sauce, because that takes you through a change effort and gives you the tools and templates and techniques of how to help an organization move forward. So ideally, based on the degree of commitment of stakeholders and their level of awareness, that you would figure out through a change readiness assessment. Has anybody ever done a change readiness assessment? Okay, not too many folks. Let me explain that for a second. Change readiness assessment, first thing you do is identify your stakeholders. Internal stakeholders, external stakeholders. Control agencies, program staff, field staff, technology, external folks, citizens, associations, other groups that are affected by whatever change is going to be happening. And then you identify which population that are the most important by doing a change readiness survey. And usually you do it electronically through SurveyMonkey. The field guide for Heart of Change has an example change readiness assessment in it. But it's really measuring level of commitment and level of awareness about the project and about the reasons for the change that you're about to embark upon. You get that data back, you plot where your stakeholders are, and then you see where they are on this commitment curve. Are they all advocates already? What do we think the likelihood of that is? Probably not, right? They're probably down in this unaware, aware trough, if you will, except for the project folks. But as you can see here, there's another dimension, which is effort. It takes a lot of effort to move people up this commitment curve. And you're not going to get everybody to move up the curve at the same rate, same time, etc. So you have to pick and choose who you're going to focus on. And there's some tools in the book, and there's other methods as well, to help you figure out who to prioritize. Who do you need to engage and empower? Who's most impacted by the change? Who are those folks that you really have to get on board? Who are the people that are never going to get on board? Those are important people to know as well, right? So you can help neutralize them. Anybody ever have that situation happen where you know that no matter what you do, you're just never going to get them to buy in? Yeah? Anybody have any success stories on how to deal with that situation?
Wait them out till the change happens.
Wait them out. Encourage to give them job openings in other departments, yes.
Takes a disaster to make them aware.
Takes a disaster sometimes to make them aware, yeah. It's a challenge, right? It's definitely a challenge. You can spend a lot of time focused on the folks who are really unhappy and really against the change, or you can use that energy and focus on the folks who need a little support to buy in and become champions of change. And that's usually, based on the research, where you should spend your time. That's where you're going to have the most effect. All right, sorry. The other thing about the change readiness assessment. So you do the survey, get the information, figure out where people are on this. That then helps you figure out your strategy of how you're going to move people up that curve. More communication, training, brown bag lunch sessions, road shows, newsletters, change agent networks. Does anybody know what a change agent network is? Change champions? So that's a tool where you identify some of those folks who are in the collaborate, commit part of the commitment curve, who are the folks that are likely to adopt the change and are respected in their different units, to come together on a weekly, monthly basis to get information about the project or about the new business processes, and then they take it and communicate it to their teams. Could be supervisors, could be managers, could be line staff. It doesn't matter. There isn't a rule there, but it's the folks who are going to be most trusted and effective in the organization. So that change agent network is also explained in Heart of Change. I don't know if folks are familiar with the productivity curve, but this isn't so. Change is important, and managing change is important because you want this to be successful. You want everybody to feel good about it. You want them to adopt it. But at the end of the day, they got to be productive, right? So to be productive, you got to get them to be productive. And in doing that, you go through this natural productivity life cycle in any new initiative. You start out with the big kickoff party, everybody's excited, so you see that little increase there. And then the reality of the project starts to sink in. People start thinking about it, they think about how they're going to be impacted by it. Then you might get to active resistance. People don't like it, they don't want it, they're going to try to sabotage it, they're going to try to sabotage you. You know, it can get personal, right? And then there's people at that point that can withdraw, bail out, right? Retire, transfer, ask to be taken off the project. There's a lot of different behaviors that can happen. And then as they learn more and get more comfortable with it, they move up that curve and become more productive. The dotted line there is kind of neutral state. You want, obviously, after a change to be more productive, and you want to get folks above that dotted line, which is why you're moving them up that commitment curve. Does that make sense? This happens on a project within the project, right? Project kickoff, everybody's excited, go to JAD sessions, oh no, we have a lot to do, start down that path. The folks who are not on the project, who are impacted by the actual outcome of the project, go through the same curve as well, but they're going through it at a different point in time. So you have to think about, you know, as the change management team, how do you manage that? How do you help the project team be successful? And how do you help your end users be successful? Oh, no, I did something. Okay. This is the 8-step approach in the Heart of Change book. And these steps are pretty basic. This is not rocket science, right? I mean, this is pretty basic stuff, but it's important. It's really creating the climate for change, being able to articulate why you want to make the change, what's the benefit, what's in it for the organization, what's in it for the individual, what's in it for the end user. Then engaging and enabling the whole organization. So you don't just want the project team to understand why we're doing the change, or even the subset of a division that's going to be impacted by it. You want the whole organization to know, because it's a new way of doing things. It's a new opportunity to transform. And then implementing and sustaining transformation, that can be hard too, right? Project's over, shiny object is installed, everybody's excited, time to move on to something else. But as we talked about earlier, that doesn't work, because that project is still living on, and there's still change, and there's still angst, there's still opportunity to bring folks along. So that's what this methodology is about. There's other methodologies too. There's the ProSci methodology, ADCAR, where you move from thinking about a change, contemplation, thank you. Contemplation, preparation, action, maintenance. So different words, but a similar concept where you're thinking about the change, going through the change, helping people through change. The Bridges transition model, which goes back, I think, to the 90s, same thing. You have a dip, and how do you get people out of that dip? So there's some other options out there based on what your organizations have used. What methodologies and tools have you guys used? Or have you? Say again, you did ADCAR? ADCAR, okay. Yeah, so there's different ones out there. So how do you know when you've succeeded? What does success look like? I'm sorry?
Everybody is still alive.
Everybody's still alive? That's the bar? Well, we kept him breathing. How do you measure success?
Hopefully you've set those metrics early in the project, and then you compare whether or not your metrics have been achieved.
Okay, so the business objectives that you're trying to achieve? Okay.
Process of transaction 10% faster, or as in Camus, pay the contractor accurately based on how many transactions they've processed.
Okay, so let me, because I agree that definitely the business objectives of what you were trying to achieve are important, but what if everybody's miserable and crying in the streets and you've achieved them, right? It's faster, but there's blood everywhere, crying, people are not happy.
Cool. I would rephrase that a little bit. So you evaluate the final solution by looking at the original problem.
Okay.
Not the original proposed requirement or original proposed solution, but the original problem.
So did you solve the problem?
Yes. Yes. I was impacting the problem.
Okay. Different way of looking at it.
Add on to that to say that in the process you haven't created an environment where you run all of your people off.
So you still have people there,
sure.
right? Retention rates are where they are, yeah.
Well, I think in addition to evaluating whether things are better, do things match your expectations going in? The intended.
Did you get
benefits.
what you were expecting? Yeah. Yeah, so a little bit about what you guys were saying, sure. Any other ideas on how you know when you've succeeded? What does success look like? We know what failure looks like, or at least we think we do, right? We read the papers and, read the audit reports. But what does success look like? Yes?
We also have customer satisfaction.
Okay, customer satisfaction, staff satisfaction.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
That people are still coming to work and hopefully they have a smile.
That's right, they're still standing and they're alive, yes. And you can do a change readiness assessment, multiple times, right? You do that initial change readiness assessment to see where people are, and then you do it again 6 months later, see if you've made any progress with the strategies you've had. You do it a couple months before go live, and then you do it after go live. And you measure how people are feeling about the changes that they've experienced. All right, yes, go ahead.
Once you go live, if you can sustain it yourself without the contractors and be able to do updates as needed, otherwise the project is going to die after a while because it's not going to be useful.
So folks are trained both in how to, do the new processes, et cetera, but also how to maintain the system, right? You're not dependent if that's not the goal at the outset. All right, so I think we're going to move into stories now. So our distinguished panel are going to share stories about their successes in change management and whatever else they want to talk about as well.